Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Genesys and Synergy Enterprise Solutions. It's entitled Transforming CX for Roadside Assistance. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, Alex, Paul, Michael or Ian, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation as we provide some ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A. I'm Fiona Keogh, CEO of Auscontact and your host for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping with you. Remember to interact with us to maximise the benefit, and as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with a recording of the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions or make comments for our guest speakers and myself from time to time. Remember, we are going to have a full Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please type your questions as we go along so you don't forget to ask them. If you're listening through headphone speakers or experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel, you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid, or you can revert to your registration confirmation email, and all the phone numbers and access codes are available there for you. I know that many of you are familiar with asking questions, but let's try the Q&A button on the control panel now, just in case. And the question for today is Olympic themed. Let's not talk COVID right now. So, what Olympic event did the very inspirational Peter Bowl compete in yesterday? It's a long race. It's a race that I couldn't even consider. Michael knows the answer. He came fourth. Andrew knows the answer. Jeff knows the answer. Okay, so all of our sports fans have now been identified. It was the 800 metres and Peter Bowl came fourth, which was a pretty amazing thing. And Simeon also came up with the correct answer. So with that, I'm really pleased to hand over to our moderator for today, Alex Boland, Director of ANZ Operations at Copc. Welcome, Alex, and over to you.
Thank you, Fiona, and everyone else for joining us today. I'm looking forward to this panel discussion. As Fiona said, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex and I'll be chairing the panel. I'm the Director of Operations for Australia and New Zealand. I work in partnership with CX Operations to improve performance. Prior to the panelists introducing themselves, I wanted to baseline the discussion with some stats, some research into the Australian industry. 66, so 2/3 of Australians had to use multiple channels, phone call or email or chat, etc., to resolve their most recent issue. Of these, 65% had to use multiple channels because they were forced to. They were forced to because the process forced them to change channels or the issue was too complex to be handled on their initial channel. And when they were forced to change channels, as opposed to choosing to, their overall satisfaction dropped by a huge 25%. So to summarize this, when we're building processes and technology around the business rather than around customers, it often drives dissatisfaction. Let's start though with a panel discussion with each of the people on the panel. If you could just introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background on your organisation as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Michael,
good morning, everyone. Michael Curtin. I'm the CEO of Digicall Assist. I look after our group business in this region. Digicall Assist is a business that trades in a number of cities in the UK, in South Africa, and here in Australia. We have a total of about 3,000 agents managing a number of different interaction lines. In Australia, our business is predominantly based around roadside assistance, where we are providing breakdown services to people in duress across Australia and New Zealand from our contact centre in Sydney. Thanks.
Thank you. Ian.
Hi everyone, I'm Ian Desouza, Managing Director of Synergy Enterprise Solutions. We're a customer engagement specialist organisation located in Australia and New Zealand, and we've been helping businesses achieve personalised experience for the last 20 years or more, way before it was called CX and contact centres and all that good stuff, which is showing my age. As Managing Director of Synergy, I obviously oversee all of our highly skilled team to make sure they have the right tools, processes and people to best serve our customers. I'm also one of Synergy's principal consultants, so that allows me to get involved on a regular basis on the technical development and other technical insights and oversee many of our complex projects. It also helps me to stay up to date with all the technical tools that are out there and fully understand what's possible when it comes to digital transformation and anything else that we play with. Plus, it keeps my inner techie happy as well.
Thanks, Ian. Paul.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Paul Jones. I'm part of the Genesys Business Consulting team. I focus on the insurance sector. I've been with Genesys now for just over 6 years, and prior to that, numerous roles within the contact center space, from vendors to actually working within contact centers. And seeing that Ian's aged himself, I'll highlight the fact that when I started in the contact center industry, phone banking was launched by one of the major banks in Australia. So, and I was helping to sell that on the phone type of thing. So that's a long time ago now. As far as Genesys is a global leader of customer experience and contact center solutions. We've been in the market for over 30 years, continuing to deliver innovative solutions. To the point every year now, we orchestrate 70 billion customer experiences across various touch points, channels and interaction types.
Okay, thank you guys. Let's start the discussion maybe with you, Michael. You've been on quite a journey. Could you just briefly describe what was the starting point, the problem statement, the pain that kicked this journey off?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I think you kind of captured a little bit in your own introduction there. We deal with people across Australia and New Zealand when they've had a broken down vehicle. And for us, the vastly predominant channel for engaging with us is via voice. And we wanted to find a way to do that differently. I guess we can look at roadside assistance on the one hand as being quite a simple thing. Perhaps some of our audience today have had an experience where they might go out and have a try to start the car. It's a flat battery. They know where they are. They know what the problem is, and that's a pretty simple case. And to be honest, that's a very common case for us. It's a very simple thing for us to fix. But there's often an aspect that becomes more complicated to that, where people may just not simply know where they are because they're in an area that's unfamiliar, or they just for various reasons may not be able to locate themselves. I think we're sharing a photo at the moment, which is a recent case that my team have assisted with down in Victoria, where the customer reported themselves as bogged just off a road. Now, I can tell you that's a lot of mud. It was actually 46 kilometres off the nearest road. And in fact, the location was very different to where the customer thought they was. We wouldn't have been able to assist them on this occasion purely based on their understanding of where they were. So this is one example of where having geolocation technology would allow us to provide a better level of service. And picking up on your introduction, what we were trying to do and have been trying to do is find a way not to force a change in the way that people want to interact with us, but rather work with them in a way that feels natural. I think we in the roadside assistance industry here in Australia, but globally, native apps have been around for a long time. They haven't proven to be a particularly successful or widely taken up tool. And I would suggest that's because when people are driving along in their car, having a great day, they don't think about having a breakdown. So they don't download the app ahead of time. And then when they do break down, they want to have that human interaction and that voice, that confidence to know that there's someone there assisting them. They're probably not inclined to sit and download an app. So we wanted to try and find a way that we could integrate that we could still use the strengths of and the advantages and the requirement to have a voice channel, but to bring in the technology aspects, the photo, the geolocation services that would come with these other services. To be honest, when we went with Genesys, we were thinking about some things, and I was messing around with some ideas, and we had a few beers one night, and we were kind of thinking about the concept, and it sort of struck us that we could do this thing that we came to call InQ-IQ, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So you need to be able to help people, and at least judging from those photos, in fairly extreme situations when they may not know what the problem is and they may not know where they are. That's absolutely interesting situation to deal with over the phone.
It is.
Ian, Michael's described this situation. When somebody comes to you, can you give us insight into your process? How do you go from hearing about an environment or situation like this to building a proposed solution?
Yeah, thanks. So it's look, we're a consultancy company, or SI. So firstly, before any commercial arrangements, obviously we go and sit down with the customer and openly discuss not just problems that they're trying to solve, because it doesn't necessarily need to be a problem, but their business initiatives. What do they want to do to enhance their experience, to enhance what they're already doing well now, and what they want to obviously achieve over time. For Digicall, they, as Michael mentioned, they had a vision of how they wanted to treat the customer, and they wanted to enhance, obviously, those current capabilities. So we go away and we think about that, and based on our in-depth experience and understanding of what technology was available and how it works and where it works well, because just because something can, a technology can do a piece of can do a function doesn't mean it does it well. Then we come up with a high-level solution that meets the need or the use case that customers like Michael are after, and then we propose that solution back to the customer, circled around for stakeholder feedback. Obviously, once it's approved, we then go into the rollout phase. And again, and this will be a common theme for some things, but you don't have to go big bang right up front straight away. You could go do all of these changes in small manageable chunks. So we take a consultative approach all the way from the very start at the pre-sales process, essentially, and then lead it through. Over to you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll go to you, Paul, now. I imagine one of the biggest challenges potential clients face is a financial investment. Can you give us an example of how potential clients would build a compelling case for technology investment?
Yeah, sure. So just to add to Ian's points, I think that's really important in terms of the power of having an open cloud-based platform. And those cloud-based platforms have really ramped up pre-crisis to where we are today in terms of adoption. So it's that ability to, like Ian said, just add small pieces rather than big bang. And that's really powerful stuff, which then leads into your consideration about the the financial investment. Does it make sense to do this? And from Michael's example, it's just a couple of beers and it makes sense to do this. But in a lot of what we're seeing in a lot of cases, there's probably two key things, right? There is the cloud migration conversation, which is all about, from an investment perspective, the total cost of ownership, really understanding what I have today, how much is that costing me, not just in maintenance of software, but all the other costs around that, like the hardware, like the ongoing patching and so on, that total cost of ownership, and then compare that to a cloud migration. So what is the total cost of a cloud migration? So that's one key area that we're seeing organizations focus on, is that migration approach. And then the other one is really about return on investment. So that add-on of functionality or bringing in a new piece of capability to the organization. That's really about value, really about benefit, and both not just in terms of cost, but time to benefit and time to value. So we help a number of organizations with that because we have a number of tools. In fact, Genesys has an entire team, a global team called Value Consulting Team, that actually works with organizations in working on those TCOs and the ROIs to help justify the investment. I think the tools are really important, but you really also need to understand from a CX perspective and an EX perspective where you're starting from. So really make sure that that's part of the conversation. You know, we're making this change for a reason, but what is the reason? What's the impact, not just financially, but organization-wide, customer, employee?
Thank you for that. So one of the themes I picked up there was that you start off with the need and then you look for the solution. I feel like some people fall in the trap of finding the technology and then start to look for a need to use the technology.
Yeah, so and I think just a critical point with that as well is once you've got the consideration or the investment piece, and you've really nailed that down, don't forget to track your success, because that project sets you up for when you go up next time for a new project, right? This is what we achieved last time, and this is why we can achieve something better on the next project.
Yeah, that's very helpful. As a reminder to the wider audience listening in, remember you can submit questions throughout this panel. They can be for us as a group, or they can be to a specific panel member. So I'd encourage you to submit them just as you're listening to the conversation here and learning. Michael, back to you. Can you walk us through the customer and the employee journey using the InQ-IQ and share perhaps some of the results or customer feedback from that?
Yeah, we'll certainly do that. I guess firstly give credit to one of my team who was, I think, 3 beers in when he came up with InQ-IQ. So well done to him. Yeah, I don't think he's joining us today, but I should give credit to Jeff for that. So
it's a very Australian business planning approach to have over a few beers.
Yeah.
Appreciate the culture.
Worse things have happened. Worse things have happened. So I'm, as a couple of you on this call know, I'm not the tech guy. So there's parts of this particular slide that I don't necessarily get in huge detail. But what we are really trying to do is to capture some basic details from the customer during that initial call. So to talk through this from the customer perspective, and perhaps just to go back a step, as I said earlier, we're predominantly a roadside assistance provider. Our clients range from prestige car brands to major insurers to financial institutions. In each case, we're providing service under a white label arrangement. So there's a multitude of inbound lines that come here, each of which is handled completely separately. Our team will be presented with a call and they'll see whether it's a particular car brand or insurer. And how InQ-IQ then fits into that is whilst the customer is in that pre-queue stage, so they've dialed the number for their roadside partner, they'll hear a message that says, we're going to send you a text message so that we can assist you more efficiently. And that text message will come through. The text message has a web link which takes through to a web form. That web form effectively captures the location, asks the customer to take a photo of their vehicle. It asks them a handful of other questions. And then the call then presents normally into our queue. Once the operator answers that call, those details are immediately available. So I guess there's a couple of points I'd probably pick up on. Firstly, to Alex's introduction again, that we're very clear that we didn't want to try and force this upon people. So it presents as an option. If the customer chooses to participate and complete the web link, wonderful, we've got that data. But if they don't, for whatever reason, they either choose not to, they don't hear it, they don't have data available, whatever it might be, then that's fine. The call just presents as normally within the queue and we go through a normal process. We had before this was with us, we'd had the ability to match based on an inbound phone number. So if the customer was calling us from a clear mobile number, an unblocked mobile number, we would be able to match that within our database and pull up the records accordingly. But InQ-IQ allows us to take that significantly further. So we're like knowing now where the customer is, those handful of questions that I mentioned, which are really around, is your car in a multi-story car park or not? When did you last drive the vehicle? Are you with the vehicle right now? And a couple of others. We're in really good shape to have a very good understanding of what that customer is going to need at time of call. So I think from a customer perspective, the journey is deliberately simple. It feels very natural. And for those that like it, the feedback has been really fantastic. For those, and I stress for those that don't want to use it, it's been a good journey for them as well. For our operators, it's been a significant change in many ways. I guess harking back to the photo that we showed earlier, whereas most cases someone says I'm at home, most customers will know their home address, we hope. Sometimes you might be surprised, but when someone is away from home, that can become a longer call. So those difficulties simply melt away. I know where you are, I know who you are, I've got a photo of the vehicle, so I've got a pretty good idea what's happening. And we find it allows us to transition from a process of identification, which is necessary but can sound a little bit not ideal, if I say suboptimal, to simply verifying that customer's details. And I think it's a much nicer experience when I'm confirming that I know who you are rather than asking you to identify yourself from the beginning.
Thank you, Michael. A couple of clarifying questions on that. Is it fair to assume that a reasonable number of your calls, the customer may not be like in a laid back, relaxed state of mind, like they're just broken down on the side of the highway and you have to keep asking them questions? Like they're the types of calls we're dealing with, aren't they?
Yeah. You put that very nicely, Alex, but people don't really call us because they're having a great day and they just want to report in and tell us how wonderful the world is for them. They are moving through a challenging day. I'm sure most, if not all of us, including me, have had a car issue, and nature of our society now is everything's pretty crazy and rushed. So it's very time bound. I think the other aspect, not only because people are perhaps upset, but we also deal across Australia and New Zealand with our client base. We're dealing in some cases with people from non-English speaking backgrounds. So to get this information provided directly is a tremendous advantage to us. Yes, Jess, we can go to the next slide, I think. I actually think we're going to show, if the technology holds for us, I think we're going to show it working, if that's okay with you, Alex.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
So this part of a demo, I always get nervous. So we're showing what the customer would see from their user side. So in this case, they've called Fiat Roadside Assistance. We have, labouring the point, I know, but we've really modelled this through to make it as natural as possible. So sorry that went a bit fast and I spoke over the top, but the customer got the text message where the device allows its ID to be found. A photo of a car, that's the broken down car out there. The location has been updating. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's moving very fast. I think this video is playing a little faster. Some simple questions. When did you drive the car? Are you currently with the vehicle? If the customer knows where, what they think the problem is and where is it now? And then they hit next and the call then presents. So we can see there, please continue to hold. We'll be speaking with you very soon.
From a technology point of view, that's all connected. The information they put in here will go to the person who answers the call. Absolutely right. So as that call answers is picked up, so whichever, it goes into a queue as normal, and whichever operator or agent is assigned that call through the usual process, that then screen pops within a Genesys window that's alongside of our in-house CRM. We use a proprietary CRM, and the Genesys sits alongside of that. We then have the ability to pull the photo, the location, and the answers to those questions directly into our CRM, which we do in real time. I think this slide gives us a sense of where we are working, to give you guys, everyone on the call, a sense of how diverse this is. So this is a snapshot the last 4 weeks of actual use of this system. Obviously, most people are located in eastern states, capital cities, but I think when you see that there's some quite remote parts of the Northern Territory, of remote Northwest Cape, Western Australia, Central Western Australia and South Australia, that I think really underline some of the strengths that the system brings to us. Those customers would be in many cases, very difficult for them to describe where they are
I left Perth 4 hours ago driving towards Cable Beach, but by using this system, we know exactly where they are. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah, it's really powerful. You can appreciate the anxiety you might feel being broken down on the nullarbor or somewhere.
Yeah, and that's a normal thing for us, Alex. I think also when we start talking about, when you mentioned a moment ago about people under stress, it's very frequent for us to deal with children locked in cars and indeed animals locked in cars, the fur babies. So it's important that we can deal and understand the situation and understand where the customer is as quickly as is possible. I think this slide that Jess has brought up for us now kind of gives us a bit of an output of the meaning of the system. What we've seen, we are getting more calls from our agents, which is clearly a good upside for us. The AHT is reduced on average by 23 seconds. Again, that may not sound much. I guess it depends on our audience today, but we're a pretty high volume centre, so 23 seconds a call makes a quantifiable difference, to a material difference to our business. But I would also say it improves all of our other metrics along the way, and certainly is a nicer experience for the customer. We get far better reporting because we've got that data that we've spoken of. We have a simplified data process. We've seen an uptick in our CSAT, which is something that's really critical to us, and our clients really are very, very happy about, and it's fitted with our quality assurance program. It gives us that another aspect to the data that we had already, but it helps us use that in a better way. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for all that data. That's a really interesting story. Maybe I'll ask everyone else, all the other panel members, to jump in here, because I think the audience, there'll be some people on this call who may be in a similar situation, Michael, you were in. So maybe I'll start off with you, Ian. What advice you would give to somebody in that kind of starting point, just considering and listening to this conversation?
Yeah, thanks. I think, going on from what we discussed before, and thanks, Michael, for showing that Australia map. I haven't actually seen that Australia map. We did a lot of testing with that service when we put it in, and checked out a lot of photos and geolocations, but we never mapped it to an Australian map. So advice to people starting the process: look, it depends on your organisation and their change and how they cope with change, but essentially start off with something small, get in there and start doing it, provide some value to the business immediately so you get some runs on the board. Get everyone, all your stakeholders together, make sure they're on board. Change is change in an organisation. People could talk for days around change, and I know Michael and I had some brief discussions around change, but start off small. Maybe you don't want to introduce every single piece of technology straight away, because it's going to be too much for the agents, potentially too much for the customers as well. So start small. But this is a key one, but sometimes it's common sense, but make sure the roadmap is aligned to what the overall business objective is. Sometimes people get caught up in the process. They're talking agile and they're talking this, and features go out the window, and they're doing more in the process than they are with actually enhancing the customer's experience or the agent's experience. So yeah, make sure it's aligned, and you strive to that. Again, break up the large projects into manageable chunks, and make sure, as Paul mentioned, that you've got the financial backing for each one of those deployments.
Thank you for that. Paul, what advice do you have?
I think just from my perspective, I think Ian sort of covered it off a bit there as well, but just really embrace the ideation process. So that power of just the new ways of thinking. I think organizations today are very different to what they were pre-crisis, right? There's a lot of encouragement, if you like, or willingness to try new things, even if they're small. just another example of the power of one person's idea was a European colleague of mine shared a story of an emergency assistance and repatriation service in Europe, where they were around a couple of hundred seats, organisation size. And then as the crisis wore on, their services weren't longer required, right? Because there wasn't that much travel going on anymore. So emergency assistance and repatriation sort of died down. And one manager approached the managing director of that organisation and said, you know what, we're really, really good at triage. We really understand how to treat these emergency situations and then work out what's the priority of action here. Why couldn't we do that on behalf of the government for contact tracing for the virus, right? So this one idea of one manager went to the MD. The MD then goes to the government there and says, we've got this idea. We're very good at triage. We've done this a lot and we know how to do it. Let's start helping you with the contact tracing. So they went from 100 seats to thousands of seats just on the power of one idea. So my advice would be embrace the idea, encourage the ideas, and change when you need to.
Thank you for that. Michael.
Yeah, I think we've got variations of a similar theme between the gents and myself. I would just say go for it. We have learned so much as we went along the way, and we're still learning. Absolutely, we're still tweaking and improving. So I'm a bit of a believer in the idea of fail fast, fail cheap, as the cliche is. We'll, to Ian's point, to get something going quickly and see how it lands. In this case, it's worked very well for us, and it continues to do so. But I have no doubt that in 6 months from now, it'll have evolved into something bigger and better. And that's the intention. So for me, I think just get on with it, and the things you learn along the way will make it will inform your decision and make it a better product at the end.
Thank you. So I wrote down start small, but start. Align your roadmap with your objectives. Embrace ideas from your team and just go for it. Get it done.
Yeah.
Let's switch back to you, Michael, on this. Just on that final point, you were talking about the future there. So what is the future for you guys? What's next? Do you have a technology roadmap or something?
Yeah, we're looking at a few different things. I think for us, in the first instance, what we're working with the team at Synergy on is ways that we can firstly improve the take-up of InQ-IQ. So as I mentioned earlier, we are restricted at present insofar as the number, we need the customer's mobile number. So Ian and his team are working on some options for us there to both improve the percentage of numbers that we get that are not blocked or not masked by our client's telephony system, or indeed if they are, to allow the customer to enter a number to do that. So we're in trial phase of that now, and then we start thinking about how we're going to roll in the other technologies that Genesys can bring to us around natural language processing and voice analytics. Those things are really exciting for us. We need those things at a really high degree of accuracy for us. As you were speaking earlier, Alex, we're dealing with people in a time of duress. We in some ways would call it an emergency service. So we need the service to be very, very, very reliable and easily accessible. But those are the things that we see in our future, and we're certainly working with Synergy on those.
Thank you for that. Just to tie into that sort of customer experience in that time of duress, I believe that you have some testimonials to share from the customer experience. Jess, could you bring those up? And Michael, perhaps you could talk us through those.
Yeah, I think this is kind of just a summary, I think, of some of the things we've all discussed today. It's really just a synthesis of some of it. So we've got a customer that's talking about, she picks up on the fact that we knew exactly where she was in this case, and that we had the photo, which you can see that she really liked that a lot. I think people, it's probably something we've all said a lot today, but we are trying hard with this to find a way to work with the customer in a way that feels natural. And these kind of comments suggest to me that we are kind of in the right direction. We'll keep trying, we'll keep tweaking, we'll keep improving, but they're to me a very good indication that we are doing something that customers like. And for someone to bother to say great use of technology is a nice bit of feedback for us. I think the feedback on the next slide, Jess, from our team again kind of just speaks to that as well. From our contact centre, Beck, we talk about how quickly the team can improve dealing with tricky calls or difficult calls, and that's what I was talking about earlier when customers don't know where they are. And then Genesys more generally giving us the coaching options, which we didn't have previously. That's outside of InQ-IQ, I might say, but it's certainly helping us a lot. And for one of our contact centre team to give that confidence, I guess that's picking up on what I said earlier about simply verifying that we know where the customer is and who they are and what the issue is, as opposed to having a conversation to have that process driven by the customer, is certainly making a big difference.
Thank you. One thing that stood out to me as you were talking through those slides is that this business case, these actions, all this effort, it wasn't a trade-off between like, we want to be more profitable, so we'll like screw our employees or our customers. Like, it's a positive thing for your employees and your customers and the business. Like, it was all at once. It wasn't choosing between those three. I think that's a really nice message.
Yeah, absolutely not. I agree. Absolutely. We certainly not. That was not any. We wouldn't generally think like that anyway, Alex. But certainly not in this project. We saw a need, and we're relatively new to Genesys. We went live in December, so we wanted to see where we could play around what for us is the margins. I suspect for Synergy and Genesys it's normal thing, but for us it was a new way of looking at a problem and understanding how we could bring the new tools that Genesys offered to us and apply them to the issues that we have. And it's so far it's been a great success, and as I said, I think it's got a long way to go.
Thank you. Paul, I'll bring you back in. A similar sort of question, kind of from a future technology perspective. What does that look like? What are the key things insurance or roadside assist verticals will be implementing in the future?
Yeah, so I think it follows on from the theme that Michael just shared in terms of leveraging data, right? Data is just going to be so critical in terms of the services that organizations offer and the type of engagements that they offer. So I think from a technology perspective, customer insights, how you're leveraging the data you got today, what data are you going to get in the future? So from an insurance perspective, if we think about Tesla, they're starting to offer insurance to their car owners, right? And they're collecting a lot of data on behavior. So Michael's probably a leadfoot and he drives really fast around the place. So when I offer him a policy, it's going to be a higher premium because I think he's a bit of a risk. Whereas Ian's he's a bit of a driving Miss Daisy. He's going to go a bit slower, so he's just going to get the easy sort of minimum, less risk. That's the type of policy I'm going to offer to Ian. No reflection on you, Ian. I don't know if you are like that or not.
but it's the other way around.
Okay. But I think it's that ability, and I think also insurance companies are looking at pay-as-you-go type models, right? So things like, I only need insurance if I'm an Uber driver. I only want coverage from the times I'm on my shift. I don't want to buy an annual policy. I just want my policy that covers me for when I'm actually working. So those types of data points and knowledge I need to understand. I need to, as an organization offering those policies. I think if we think as well in terms of the way that insurance companies look to bring people on, there's lots of examples out there how that's been automated. Ping An in China is a great example where the time to actually get someone on board is around 2 minutes. So from the time of application to the time of coverage, 2 minutes, I'm done, I'm signed up. So there's that, and that's all automated. 90% of it is automated. No requirement for any sort of agent involvement. The other thing with that as well is we think about claims management. How do you automate that? There's a lot of opportunity within that as well from the use of technology. So customer insights, leveraging the data, personalizing that, using that to personalize the experience, and then think about how do I make it easier for my customer? How do I make more automation available? Is it through the app? Is it through online services? How do I make that happen? So I think that's where, from an insurance and roadside perspective, that those focus areas need to be. And then if we think about from an engagement perspective, right? So, but in the past, contact centers have really focused on efficiency and effectiveness, right? That's really what we've been about. But there's a third component now, and that's empathy. And what we mean by empathy is the customer feels remembered, they feel heard, and they feel understood. So it's all about context, right? And to achieve that, you really need to have a technology platform that allows you to understand the customer. So what data have I got? Historical data on the customer, and that can be from a range of platforms, right? You should really look to be leveraging other platforms like your CRM platforms. Maybe you've got massive data lakes with Google or someone like that. All that needs to be brought into an open platform that you can then leverage to make decisions about how I personalize that. So personalizing the experience with empathy builds that loyalty, and it builds that trust, and it builds your brand. Key point. Now, from also as an experience, this is called experience as a service from a Genesys perspective. You're leveraging other tools because if you want to personalize, you've got to be able to personalize at scale. So I need artificial intelligence solutions and machine learning solutions and a lot of automation around that. And from a customer engagement perspective as well, I need to understand when is the right time to engage. At what point in that customer's journey should I reach out? And what should I reach out with? Is it an automated solution like a chatbot or a voice bot? Or is it at a point where, say, for Michael's business, where this person's in distress, they've had an accident or they're in some remote area? That requires human assistance, right? So we should know that. We should be able to achieve that and get to that straight away. So from a technology perspective, overall, from an industry perspective, I think those are the two key areas. Really focus on those customer insights and leveraging the data, and then really think about how you engage in a personal way at scale.
Lots of interesting themes there. I particularly like the idea of more personalized insurance. Maybe we'll see what the future holds, but maybe for future lockdowns, we can call our insurance company and negotiate a partial refund when we haven't used our car for 4 weeks.
That's a great idea. I'm for that.
Okay, that was the last one of my questions for the panel. I imagine some questions have come through from the audience, and I think, Fiona, you will jump in and lead us through the Q&A. Is that right?
Thanks, Alex, and absolutely, and thanks, gentlemen, for the journey that you've taken me on. I used to work for a roadside assistance company many years ago, and I'm having flashbacks as I'm listening to Michael talking about all the great automation that's going on and etc. And I can remember back in the day, the call would come through, the operator, and they were called operators in those days, would fill out a cardboard card. It would then be put on a conveyor belt, right down to the other end of the contact centre, or it was called a call centre then, and then the dispatch girls, and they were called girls in those days, would then use the system to call the radio in the service person's car and make sure that they were dispatching them. And of course, the questions were nowhere near as advanced as what you were talking about, Michael, as do you know your rego number? People didn't. Secondly, what colour's your car? Okay, yeah, well, I'm colourblind, so that'll work. And the third question was always, do you know what the nearest cross street was? I don't know, I'm lost. I have no idea. So it was always panic stations. So thank you for resolving all of that and making it a much simpler and seamless experience as you work together with Genesys and with Synergy Enterprise Solutions to develop I don't know, an easier, happier, relaxed, caring sort of process. So I want to ask Ian a question, if I may. Ian, the question is, and this is how long is a piece of string maybe, has the pandemic actually changed digital transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Paul touched on this one earlier on. You know, obviously everybody's had to go really quickly. You know, you look back at whenever this started in 2020 or 2019, everybody was working from home, or sorry, from the office on their, and let's just to our core technology, which is telephony and contact center, they were bound to their desk in the office, in the physical office. That had to move very quickly to home. But that also drove not just obviously telephony and contact center, but cloud computing. A lot of CRMs already in the cloud, but also little features or that people needed or enhancements. And what's happened is, I think that the whole change process has changed in people's minds. Previously there was a lot of resistance to change, right? And I think with COVID coming around, people have had to sort of open up and say, you know what, I'm working from home, and you can still do your job, but I want this new feature, so I'm just going to accept whatever the organisation is bringing through, rather than pushing back on it. Because a lot of the times when there's change, people start pushing back. So what has that meant for digital transformation? I can tell you, with all the customers that we're working with, there's a lot of projects, enhancements and updates. So you don't need to go, again, going back to one of my original points, you don't need to go, right, we need a new system, bang. You keep rolling out, keep iterating, keep enhancing, implement, look back at what you've done, look forward at what you want to do, and just keep rolling through. So it's definitely changed. The pandemic has definitely changed the way we approach projects and digital transformation. Absolutely.
Thank you. Paul, what's your perspective on that?
I 100% agree. And there was actually I agree in terms of what we're seeing from Genesys as well, the number of organisations that are looking to do things differently. And there was a McKinsey report that was October last year that really sort of touched on this. So the report's available, you can just search it for it on Google. But it was about the pre-crisis trend of digital interactions compared to during crisis. We're still in the crisis, right? So from the number of interactions, the average share of interactions that were digital, customer interactions that were digital, the trend was from 2017 to 2019 to now, we're 3 years ahead of where we're meant to be if we had have maintained that trend. And then they did, it was really, and then there was another one as well in terms of, from an organisation perspective, the number of products or services that are partially or fully digitalised now, same time frame, and that trend, we're now 7 years ahead of where we would have been if we had have stayed with the pre-crisis. So it's a great report. There's more data in there, so I'd encourage everybody to have a look for it and have a read of it. But it's really interesting in terms of how this has forced organisations to go down the digital path, because I think pre-crisis, everybody was talking about digital experiences, but the action wasn't there as much as it needed to be. It was because that kind of mindset, we always do things this particular way, and we'll get to that. And there's a number of IT projects and so on that we have to focus on first. But I think it really changed when we had to move fast and move quick, to Ian's point, that it's been embraced, and we're seeing the results of digital transformation really, really accelerating.
Fantastic. Michael, just from your perspective, did it accelerate your strategy with respect to digital?
Yeah, I would say not really. I mean, I'm in my office today. I'll say one part slightly separate to that. We've got all of our agents working from home, and I still can't get used to that. I've got an empty contact centre out in front of me, which is very strange indeed for someone that's used to sitting and hearing the buzz. It seems very quiet. But to answer your question, I don't think it's changed our timelines as such. We always had a plan in play. COVID for us hasn't really changed that as such. I think there were some other background issues around our timing to move to Genesys, and the move to Genesys has really allowed us to start moving those things now. But I would say we're roughly on the kind of timeframes that we thought we might or wanted to be. we're probably a little bit different in so much as I guess we've said a few times, but we're a somewhat of an emergency service. It's not a sales type business, or it's not a customer journey, if I use it in that way in the traditional sense. It's much more transactional, but with a critical aspect to it. So I feel probably COVID hasn't really changed the timeframes that much.
Sure. We do have a question from Michael to Michael, which makes it a little bit challenging, but that's okay. So Michael would like to know, and it kind of links to another question, is what the customer take-up rate is on using this technology and how you plan to increase the uptake.
Okay, it's a good question. I did not write myself that question, just so you can be clear, Fiona. It's not from me to me.
Oh, I can see who it's from.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, that's a good question. So it depends. I mentioned earlier that we have an incredibly diverse range of customers, ranging from different car manufacturers that are premium, ultra premium brands through mass market brands. We deal with insurers, and we deal with banks and other institutions. The take-up rate amongst each brand is distinctly different. It would not be appropriate for me to name particular names. I'll just speak with a little bit of information if I can. I'll speak in tongues a little bit, but one of our current customers focuses on an older demographic of their customer base, tends to be older and tends to be in regional Australia. For those two reasons, the technology uptake generally tends to be lower, and we see a lower uptake of InQ-IQ amongst that base. We have another customer that's highly digital enabled through the entirety of their purchase process, and those customers conversely are highly engaged in the InQ-IQ process. So we definitely see that the target demographic of our customer makes a massive difference. To speak about how we're going to improve it, I think I might have mentioned a couple of the ways. Firstly is to allow us to send more of the links. So we're working with Ian and his team at Synergy to get more data. So in some cases, we're getting the telephony forwarded to us by our client, and in some cases that masks the caller ID. So we're working on solutions for that. We're also working on when we're actually in trial now, for the customer to, the system determines if it's a valid mobile number or not. If it's not a valid mobile number, the customer has the ability to enter manually a mobile number, and we're looking at some other ideas around that. So stay tuned.
Fantastic. A very contact centre centric type question. So Michael, of course, it's going to be directed at you. Not that Ian or Paul couldn't answer it, or Alex for that matter. However, you shared some really interesting stats, and one of them that always jumps out at contact centre managers, whether it be for the right or the wrong reasons, is your AHT saving of 23 seconds. And people will typically dollarise what that means for their business.
Yes.
And often in that dollarisation is an FTE count, because that's typically how it's worked out. So you would have freed up FTE.
Yes.
Can you maybe share what you did with that freed up FTE, if you're able to?
Yeah, I guess we've been very fortunate that the business has grown. Our business has been growing exponentially for the last 5 years for the business, but particularly the last 2 has been quite dramatic in terms of growth. So I feel in a challenging market where COVID has been unkind to many businesses and many people, we've actually been quite fortunate through our partnerships that we've done quite well. So for us, what that has done, the savings that we've generated have meant we've been able to deal with that growth without adding to our FTE at the same rate we would have previously. We've still added FTE, and that's a good thing. But we didn't need to add as many as we needed to. I think the other thing, I don't know how much time I've got, Fiona, but without boring everyone to death, but our business is highly structured around time of day and day of week. And I'll speak of this in both pre-COVID and post-COVID. So pre-COVID, I've been in the business 18 years. We knew, I think you might have had some experience if you worked for a roadside business in the past, Monday morning is your busiest time. Your midweek is busier than weekends, and there's peaks around Saturday sport when mum and dad are playing the Uber or the taxi to get their kids around to different sporting ovals. We had a very clear model. That model changed very, very significantly with COVID, with people working from home, with schools in some states closed now or have been closed, with social activity completely different. So our normal peaks and troughs have changed very markedly. And the reduction in the AHT has allowed us to deal with those unexpected, unmodelled peaks and troughs much more effectively.
Fantastic. One for you, Ian. And we're going to talk about change management programs, because clearly what you do as an organisation is you bring about, as does Paul, and we'll get to you shortly, Paul, you bring around about amazing changes, and perception of the people in the business. Senior management are all on board and are all champion it. But how do you make sure that it's a success and support people like Michael to make sure that he comes out the other end unscathed and uninjured, for want of a better term?
Yeah. Obviously, to its core, the most to give everybody the confidence is, what we can do with technology now, technology prowess. But, change, we can't enact the change in the organisation. That needs a lot more than just the outside party coming in with a technology. It needs, it needs a lot of change champions. Michael's organisation was very dynamic. The people were willing to change. Everyone, knew there was stuff coming, but they were happy to accept that it was coming, and what was coming was going to benefit all of the people, the customers, etc. On the other hand, other customers, and especially the larger ones, they turn at a slower rate than some other customers. And I can guarantee you, I've worked with a lot of the big ones, and look, it's always a challenge. And I think, like Paul said, there's also multiple initiatives going on in these companies. So you also have to fit into the pipeline of projects. But the business and the customers, and we'll call this the businesses, the business people, they have the power to make that change. IT is just a tool that you need to use. We're not the person that does the change lever, right? So if you've got a sales organisation or sales area in the organisation, they've got a lot of power in making things happen, because if it stops numbers from happening, the change will get pushed through. So hope that answers some of the question, but change is an interesting one depending on the organisation.
Absolutely. And Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It really does come down to the size of the organisation and the size of the project. We do offer change management services, but we find in a lot of cases there is a change manager in place, right? So it really is making sure we work with that exec sponsor for the change. They are, like Ian said, the change champion, and really making sure that what was agreed that would be delivered and the business outcomes, that's what we're focused on. We're not focused on the fact that we implemented a piece of technology. You've got to be focused on achieving the outcome and the reason for change. So that's really where we work with the organisations on their change management piece.
Fantastic. We're almost at time, so I guess I need to ask for some closing remarks. Who wants to put their hand up first and close? Maybe Michael, we'll pick on you first. There you go. I didn't give you a chance to nominate.
Wow. I don't think I've got anything to add. Significant other than what we've spoken of. For us, it's been a pretty quick journey. As I mentioned, we went live with Genesys in December. We had IQ trialing in, I think, very early January. Was in our market in February. We're tweaking it and we'll continue to do so. I think it's only the beginning, as I mentioned earlier. But as I said, get on with it.
Brilliant, Ian. So I'm now going to direct, because that's what I do.
That's all right. Again, get started, dream big, take your vision, plan out the journey, and go for it.
And Paul?
I would just say, great conversation, really enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone. But my probably message is engage. So engage with your partners, your suppliers, engage with forums like Auscontact and like user groups as well that various platforms have. Just really engage and learn from each other, and you'll get some great stories and great experiences from having those kinds of conversations.
And Alex, as moderator, you want to just give us a summary of the whole session?
Can I summarize an entire hour into 5 seconds?
Go for it, mate.
Perhaps not summarize the whole thing, but one of the key themes that stood out to me was what Michael had said earlier, is that by putting the customer at the heart of this change, it delivered value not just to the customers and to the clients, but to his employees and to the business. I think if you look to the voice of the customer and you let their voice drive the changes, whether that is technology or process or whatnot, you can deliver value to all your stakeholders. So put customers at the heart of your changes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to Ian, Paul, Michael, and Alex for your time today, and to everybody that joined us and took time out of their busy days. You know, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope your families are well. For those of you that are working from home and homeschooling, I take my hat off to you. I don't know how you do it. You're amazing people. Special thanks to Genesys and Synergy Enterprise Solutions for enabling this webinar to happen. Have a safe and wonderful day wherever you might be. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.